beating a dead horse, that went better in my head as far as puns go. I'm Sean McKinda.
Ah!
That's Jackson Keller. We're clearing up Hitchcock month. We've gone through 3 of the man's greats. We could wrap up with the 4th, which is, North by Northwest of his big movies. Instead, we're wrapping up with the other movie, the one that everyone also knows, but isn't very good.
I didn't realize until I watched this again just how many memes about the birds I had buried in my subconscious. And I'll go into more detail on those, but I've been teasing one in particular for at least a week now. So, as has been mentioned several times, one of the reasons for my intimate familiarity with Hitchcock is that I took a class about Hitchcock in undergrad. Great class. Learned a lot about criticism, learned a lot just about, writing and craft. It was a great class. And my professor was like peak English professor. Like, I'm talking like brown suit, tweed jacket, like late 50s, early 60s, old sardonic guy.
Close your eyes, imagine an English professor, there you have it type of thing.
He is literally, whenever anyone says stereotypical English professor, he is who I imagine. So, we look at the syllabus, and the usual suspects are all there, all the ones that Sean just mentioned, including some of his older films, some of his earlier films, not necessarily, like, less important or more obscure, but not as well known, if you see what I'm saying.
Not in the zeitgeist in the way that some of his other stuff is.
No, like there's stuff that's like film people know about and talk about, but I think the only movie that Hitchcock ever won Best Picture for was Rebecca, and nobody really talks about Rebecca. So that was on the syllabus. The most conspicuous absence, however, was The Birds, and I don't think that my professor addressed it until like halfway through the semester. And when he finally did, this is what he had to say about The Birds. He just sort of paused in the middle of talking about a completely unrelated film. Like, it probably was one of the later ones that was like close to this era. And he was just like, guys, I'm going to be honest with you. The Birds, I don't know what the hell is going on with The Birds. So, like, if you have any coherent idea, I would love to hear it. So I took this as a challenge. So even though it wasn't part of the syllabus, the only reason that I had seen The Birds before is that we had 2 major papers that semester. We had to write one about a film that we watched as a class, and we had to write a second one about a Hitchcock movie that we did not watch in class. So naturally, as soon as he said, what the hell is going on with The Birds, I was determined to write an A+ paper about what the hell was going on in The Birds, and determined to wring some meaning out of it. I got like an A-. I did all right. I vaguely remember what I said about it. But, it wasn't, I'm sure I didn't like blow his mind. I was very, very disappointed in that. So that's the big meme, in that I watched The Birds as like a masturbatory English major, like pat on the back challenge issued by my wonderful, sarcastic English professor man.
And came out of it not feeling any different from what I can gather either.
No, we'll get more into that. My feelings about The Birds have softened a little bit, because at the time when I watched it, I was just like, this is total schlock. like I had really loved pretty much all the movies that we had watched up until that point for that class. And then I watched The Birds, and I couldn't believe that this was one of the most well-known Hitchcock films, like number 2 compared like only to Psycho. I'm like, this is The Birds? Really?
So you felt about The Birds how I felt about the rest of Hitchcock month.
Pretty much. Having watched it again, my opinions on The Birds has softened. I have more of an appreciation for it now. I see why it's popular. I see why people like it. But I don't that much.
Yeah, this is actually also my second time watching The Birds. I have watched, well, all right. if we're being honest here, this is like my 7th time watching The Birds because Birdemic is just The Birds, but more enjoyable to watch. But actually watching The Birds, this is my 2nd time watching it. This is the one Hitchcock movie I had seen before we embarked on Hitchcock month. I had watched it way back when in high school over multiple days, which is pretty much the only way I would have gotten through it back in high school because, God damn, this movie is boring. And I remember even back then being like, this is the stupidest fucking thing I've ever watched. What is going on with any of this? Knock, knock, knock. Who is it? It's me. You've never been in this town before. Why would you say that? Yeah, I didn't like it way back when. I didn't like it this time either. I wouldn't say I hate it or anything like that. The problem is that I genuinely do believe that if you said watch either The Birds or Birdemic, I would choose Birdemic 100% of the time because The Birds is the right level of well made that it is just boring. It is the perfect mix of good enough and also still bad that I'm just like, this movie sucks. There is very little entertainment that I'm getting out of it. I am mostly just wanting my 2 hours back at the end of it. Whereas Birdemic, I can have a good time at it. I can laugh at Rod. I can laugh at Ramsey. I can laugh at Ramrod. It's great. They're fucking stupid.
The Birds, or Birdemic rather, really is just The Birds made by a total clown. It's actually astounding in terms.
No, that is the thing that I did not know going into this is how much Birdemic is literally just The Birds. Like, it's not necessarily like a shot-for-shot remake in any way, shape, or form, but like watching them close to one another, or I didn't even watch it that close to one another. I've just seen Birdemic enough times now that I can basically recite it from memory. I can point out like, okay, this is clearly influencing that. This crazy old person is clearly influencing that crazy old person. The final shot is just a mirror of each other, which I thought was absolutely hilarious. Like, that is supposed to be some deep, profound shit, and it is nothing in either way. It means nothing in either film.
Yeah, there's structurally it's identical. There are several like shots and images that Birdemic takes literally. But no, I mean, I generally agree with your assessment. I don't think, like I said, I am kinder to The Birds now than when I first watched it. I think that this would have played really well to people in 1960 whenever it came out. But nowadays, it's not even like it's so horrible. I think that there's a lot of things about the movie that set it apart from other Hitchcock films, but not in a good way. Like, what if I'm not mistaken, this came out right after Psycho? This was his next film after Psycho?
Yes, I can confirm. I did look this up. There was a couple of like seasons of his show or something like that, but like it was Psycho and then this were his 2 theatrical releases in a row.
Yeah, and so like what these movies feel like to me, because there are some similarities between this and Psycho. I think that Psycho overall is much more enjoyable to watch. And it really comes down to characters. You know, as we talked about in the Psycho episode, I think that Marion Crane and Norman Bates are really interesting characters. And this movie just doesn't have that. There's some good shots. There's some good visuals. There's some good sets. There's even some good, like, the germ of some good themes and ideas here, but it feels...
I just need to interject really quick because I was also thinking, boy, there are some good shots, but in the context of everything else that was going on around them, I still laughed at them. Like, her puttering away from the shore and that boat was like a really good shot. It's really well shot, like structure, everything about it's very aesthetically pleasing, but it's just her on this boat, like... going across this lake to deliver lovebirds. And so like this appreciation for what was a good shot is just like, yes, I will admit this was well done, but also it is so stupid.
It's an incredibly weird story. Like, none of the characters feel like real people, which I feel like is unusual. Like, I feel like Hitchcock movies tend to be pretty strong on their characters, and they
is that how they flirt in the 60s? Was that anything? Was that human interaction?
I don't think that it was. Because, like, there are some... I mean, granted, the lead guy is no fucking Jimmy Stewart, but, you know, even Hitchcock's other contemporaries, like, there was definitely a lot more chemistry than what we see going on here. Like, our male lead is almost as boring as Ramrod in Birdemic.
Oh my god. Can we defend Birdemic as something that was clearly masterfully crafted to match the intentions of Mitch, a boring ass Mitch?
Yeah. Oh god.
I'm sorry, you had something important to say before I had to segue off about shot construction and how stupid it all is.
It's fine. But yeah, like, so the characters are not very Hitchcockian. Like, the story, like, Hitchcock movies, I think that the three that we've chosen overall haven't been great examples, but I think overall it's fair to say that Hitchcock movies tend to be pretty tight in terms of plots. Like, I think Rear Window is a good example, but, like, you know, maybe North by Northwest would be a better example than, you know, Psycho, which has a deliberately, like, kind of fucked up structure, and Vertigo, which is more meandering and, you know, maybe the start of him being more experimental. But yeah, I think that overall, like, what Psycho and the Birds kind of feel like to me is Hitchcock saying, all right, I'm the master of suspense and I know it. I've made, you know, a lot of these great thrillers, a lot of these great, like, you know, memorable character pieces and romances. I'm gonna go do weirdo shit now. I'm going to go be edgy and lurid and grisly because I'm Alfred Hitchcock and I can get away with it. And that, you know, that's something that's much more present in Psycho, but I think to a lesser degree is something that you can appreciate here. So for, like, 1963 or whenever, like, this movie's pretty gory for, like, a mainstream thriller. Like, there's a lot of
some good eye pecking going on here, like some good corpses just in general.
Yeah,
like, you don't get to see it, which I think is what a lot of the modern audiences look for. Like, I know there's the argument of, you know, what you don't see is scarier than what you do see. But in horror film, I think that there's a kind of an inversion of that, because you are looking for those kills to get your thrills, you know?
Yeah. And I think that, like, so the bodies, and then, like, the fact that they're birds, and birds in general are kind of like gross animals. They molt, they just shit wherever. You know, there's thousands of them. They're just flying everywhere, like, coming at you from all sides. I think that...
Can we really quick just interject here that I do not agree with this position and, in fact, really enjoy birds. And maybe at this point we should also explain the two angles that we approach birds from, because this does inform some of how the movie plays.
I think, actually, the most damning thing you could say about this movie is that I fucking hate birds and I'm terrified of them. And this movie doesn't get... There's, like, one scene in this movie that, like, makes my skin crawl, but otherwise I just kind of look at it like, okay. While we're dropping all my bird-related memes, I feel like we must have talked about this on the show at some point. Maybe it was just on a stream, but I was psychologically traumatized as a 2-year-old by my mother. Yeah, that's very Hitchcockian as well. You know, that's related to this movie. But my mother psychologically traumatized me, not on purpose, as you know, parents often do. We were at, like, a petting zoo or some farm, and I was, like, 2 years old, and I either couldn't walk very well, or I was just an entitled, lazy little fuck, and I wanted mom to carry me everywhere. So she was holding on to me because she was, like, chaperoning a field trip for my older sister. And, you know, they were off petting the goats, and apparently I started, like, wriggling in her arms. And my mom was like, all right, you little shit. Like, you know, stop wriggling, I'll put you down. But I wasn't just wriggling because I was uncomfortable. I was wriggling because this giant-ass fucking turkey had walked right up, like, beneath me. It was, like, pecking at my shoes. It was just, like, chilling right next to me. And so mom was lowering me onto the turkey. And I freaked out and it freaked out. I don't consciously remember a minute of this, but, like, these are deep psychological scars. Like, yeah, birds, especially, like, flightless birds or, like, poultry, the more it looks like a dinosaur, the more repulsed and revolted I am. Fuck birds. The worst thing in the world was finding out that dinosaurs were not badass like proto dragons, but they were giant cuck birds. Fuck birds.
So I felt like that was important to kind of lead into Jackson's whole tirade against fucking disgusting, weird, molting birds, and I'm just like, I don't know, man. I think birds are adorable, and like, I'm not gonna sit here and say that like your opinion isn't rare, but I feel like most people are at least fairly chill with birds, not in the way you are.
Well, to be fair, I think to be fair to the movie, I think that the way that like it captures the swarms and like the feathers and the noises that it makes, I think that it does a good job like portraying the birds themselves as something that is kind of gross and scary, even if you are like bird neutral or bird positive.
Yo, I'm pro bird. I think birds should vote, all right? Legalize birds.
Legalize fucking meteor taking out all the giant ass birds known as dinosaurs. My life was a lie, goddamn.
So many traumas on Jackson about birds. Just so many.
Yeah, but no, that's that's the funny joke, is that whenever anyone asks me, like everyone in my family and a few of my other friends, when they ask what we were talking about this week, I'm like, oh, the birds. And I'm like, and then they're like, oh, why don't you like the birds? And they're like, oh, of course you don't like the birds. And I'm like, well, yes, but that's not the reason.
Yeah, no, that is a small reason off to the side. Like, I don't like a lot of things that are portrayed in movies, but I'll still like those movies. I'm a scared dude, but I'll still watch them.
If anything, you would think that my ornithophobia would make me more susceptible to like getting some genuine thrills out of this. And like I said, there's a couple of scenes, but I feel like overall, I don't know if it's just because of the visuals being dated, or if it's just like, you know, the characters aren't very compelling, so like you're not as invested in the story and the writing. I don't know exactly what it is, but I feel like there's a lot of great Hitchcockian suspense building, but not a lot of great payoffs. Like, you know, when the birds swarm, it's either just kind of dull or silly. Like that scene in the, I mean, do we even give a fuck about spoilers in this?
I mean, not really. Spoilers, I guess.
But like, so the scene where like, you know, the guy like blows up the car because there's like a Rube Goldberg machine.
Oh my god, I knew you were gonna talk about that scene. Run, no, put out the cigarette. What?
That's the kind of scene that made me think when I first saw it, like, oh my god, this movie is complete fucking schlock. So that was fun, but it wasn't like horrifying, you know?
It also clearly inspired the dive bombing exploding birds in Birdemic.
100%.
I'm just gonna link all of this shit back to Birdemic for anyone who is listening to this having seen Birdemic and not the birds, because I'm sure there's not a small subset of people who are in that situation. And honestly, I envy you having seen the birds twice.
Sean, it's about birds. but no, yeah, like the payoffs here, like there's a disconnect that keeps the scares from really working. And this the I wanted to bring up before we move on to the next point is that like a lot of the effects, like it's so weird because sometimes the bird attacks look pretty good when they're using like clearly like actual like puppets and physical objects and stuff. Then there are other times where it's just a silly looking overlay of birds flying around.
That still looks better than Birdemic.
Oh, it absolutely does. I'm not here to shit on the movie. Like that's another thing is that like I'm sure that, you know, those kind of effects were, you know, not as corny. Like they probably look more legitimate.
I was gonna say, like, it's not even that hard to set aside your suspension of disbelief for this movie. Like, it's kind of goofy, like when you just kind of go, all right, listen, I know how I feel about this movie at this point. I've watched 3 bird attacks. I'm gonna have some fun with this one. But like for the first few, I'm like, all right, listen, it definitely doesn't look great, but I see what they're going for and I can appreciate it for that. It's just too bad that it's not good in like any other capacity.
Yeah, like the effects are dated, but they're not terrible. Like if you know what I'm saying. But this did create one meme moment that like I legit had to pause the movie and like for half an hour was scouring my computer and YouTube to see if I had actually made this video and uploaded it. I never did. But in that scene where the birds first go in the house, where Tiffy Hedren sees like the one sparrow by the fireplace and they all like flood out like Hogwarts letters. I had accidentally discovered, and this is like the deepest cut meme in the fucking world, and it's gonna sound like nonsense to everybody, but I promise this was like the best bit I had ever seen. I was writing my paper about the birds to the Chrono Trigger soundtrack back in the day, because I needed something that something to write a paper to. Video game music doesn't have any lyrics, so I was referencing that scene for something in the paper, and the music that was playing when I played this clip was the boss fight with Magus, like one of the like climactic like big fights in that game with this really like grand epic music, and like the beats lined up so fucking well that I was desperately scouring my computer to see if I had like saved this video file to like re-upload it, or if I'd uploaded it to YouTube before, because like there's a little like swashbuckling part that syncs up perfectly for when boring Mitch McConnell lead man is swatting at the birds with like a towel.
Holy shit.
Like I might just try to recreate this video just so everyone has a reference, because this is like the deepest cut in the world. But like I was like, God, I remember our roommate Kay, he was in the room, I think, when I was writing this paper and discovered this, and we were both just howling about it. I bet you if I asked him, he would fucking remember what I'm talking about.
God, incredible.
So I'm gonna try and recreate it, kids. Maybe it's not as funny as I remember, but yeah, like there were just so many moments like that where like I kept watching the movie and be like, God, I memed the shit out of this. Like,
I mean, I would say it's a very memeable movie, but there is just so much swaths of absolutely nothing happening that it's really hard to do so. Like,
yes,
it's one of those movies where if you watch like a supercut of the highlights, you'll get a good gist of it. But like, man, watching the whole thing is a slog. Like there were multiple times where I'm like, it has to have been like half an hour, an hour and a half. At this point, we have to be getting close to things happening. And then I'll look at my phone and be like, it's been 20 minutes. The movie has been going on for 20 minutes. I swear to God, it's been an hour. The last half an hour of the movie, I checked my phone like every 3 minutes. I was bored out of my fucking mind.
Same. And like, that's the thing, is that this movie famously ends in kind of a weird anticlimax where they just drive away. And like,
well, all right, we need to call a spoiler spot somewhere in here so I can propose everything else that we're doing right now.
Oh yeah.
So let's pretend that this is spoilers here, because we're about to talk about the very ending, even though I spoiled the ending like second sentence in this fucking podcast.
It's the birds. Everyone knows this movie.
And if they don't, they're not missing anything. Hot take. Or they know Birdemic, whereas then they know the birds anyway. So next week we're getting off Hitchcock month, and I was gonna say that we're kind of taking a hard turn, but we're going from a schlock movie to a different schlock movie. So I don't know how different it is. It's different in a lot of ways. We're watching Independence Day. Let's lay it out on the table. You can decide how far we're going from the birds to Independence Day, but it's coming out around July 4th. Let's do it. Why not? Independence Day. If you enjoy the podcast, leave us a review on iTunes, subscribe, tell friends. It's the only way we grow. Podcast at BADH_cast on Twitter. patreon.com/BADHcast. Jackson's YouTube page, Jackson Keller. I think that's it.
That's it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that jazz. So anyway, fuck the bird.
Fuck the birds. Talk about the ending. I want to talk about the dialogue a little bit and some parallels to modern properties.
Yeah. I mean, the ending's a great example for like my mixed feelings on the movie, because like I agree, like the movie is boring, I don't really enjoy it, but like I weirdly respect it that Hitchcock's gonna be like, all right, like, you know, normally I like to have my endings like really definitive, like everything gets tied up pretty well at the end of Hitchcock movies, like very traditional for the most part. So like, hey, I'm just gonna have this movie like there isn't even going to be a real climax. Tippi Hedren's going to get attacked by some birds, and they're just going to drive away. And, you know, that's your lot. That's your movie. And, like, I respect that impulse.
Well, if you do get attacked by birds, it's important to note here, if you get attacked by birds, the answer is brandy. Actually, the answer to every injury in this movie is brandy. So, honestly, let's get fucking wasted, y'all.
I still have a little bit of whiskey in a glass from my drunk street. If I could down it right now, this be
hell yeah. Well, do you have any injuries right now though?
You know, I did cut my leg earlier.
Brandy, whiskey, do it. It's the only answer. There is no other solution than alcohol to fix your problems.
Oh, amazing. But yeah, I don't know. And like with the themes, like there's I don't even know if I'd call them themes. They're definitely motifs, and like,
I would call them ideas.
Yeah, of like the construction of the family unit, and you know the invasive species angle, and like Tippi Hedren's character being an invader, and like urban versus rural. Like there's pretty fertile ground for like a thematically rich movie. Like I feel like that's what my professor was getting at, and that like in most Hitchcock movies, it's not that like they're 100% like solved or anything like that, but like, you know, there is a tightness, there's that coherence to them, whereas this is just a lot more messy. And you know, at the time that it came out, maybe that messiness is what made it and Psycho so appreciated and like important movies. But watching it now, like way more than Psycho, like I feel little reason to recommend anybody watch this now. Like Psycho, at least, like I'd say if someone asked me should I watch Psycho, I'd say yes, Norman Bates is an interesting movie villain, and you know it's an important cultural thing, so go for it. But this,
and the first half is interesting.
Yeah. But this is just like, okay.
This is a weird movie where it kind of feels like there are a lot of ideas, themes, motifs in it, absolutely. But they're all kind of half-baked and come out half-baked, just in general. Like, every single one of them gets thrown in, and like you can kind of see either a starting point or an ending point to it, but you don't see the other half of that. So, like, what I was talking in the pre-discussion about, like, invasive species. I guess I've had the whiskey. I've had my injuries. Invasive species. Where like there's a double entendre with birds, and like the way that we used to refer to women as birds, which we're just gonna walk past the problematic element of that. Because it's there, we all know it. Moving on.
I mean, remember, this is the movie that famously like got Hitchcock Me Too'd before Me Too'd was a thing by throwing birds at Tippi Hedren and psychologically torturing her. It's probably worth reiterating for people who don't know that.
That is true, honestly. So there are some issues with this movie. But if we want to take the birds as an invasive species, like it starts with Tippi Hedren bringing lovebirds into an area where lovebirds definitely aren't native, Hadaway Bay or something like that, which like it looks like a Scottish loch or something like that. It's in California, but yeah, it looks like a Scottish loch. That's fucking cut that. That's garbage. So she brings lovebirds into this Scottish loch, and god damn it.
Ain't getting cut now, boy.
Oh, fuck. I was actually gonna try and cut it. No, I can't. So she brings lovebirds to this Scottish loch, And like the idea there is she's a city girl, and she's entering this area, and it's basically disrupting the whole native ecosystem of the town. So like people are all looking at her weird when she walks into the restaurant. The teacher's kind of like side-eyeing her the entire time. The birds are non-native, and so the birds get angry at this bird bringing birds into the bird town. Yeah, I mean there's an interesting idea there, but it doesn't really coalesce into anything. It's Tippi Hedren's just like this beautiful blonde woman, and like there's not the town isn't established well enough to be like tight knit or interesting. There's some kind of dialogue in it that almost reminds me of Twin Peaks in a lot of ways, but like it doesn't coalesce in the same way that Twin Peaks does to be a really tight knit town with Agent Cooper doing his own thing and kind of being an outsider. There's some kind of Shadows Over Innsmouth vibe to it, the H.P. Lovecraft story where the people are all kind of secretly water people. Once again, doesn't really go anywhere with that. This is the type of thing where it's a time period where if they had swapped out Tippi Hedren for like a black man, you could make a race allegory with this whole thing, and it could be interesting in that way. Instead, this whole invasive species idea is just kind of there and doesn't really do anything. On the flip side, you have Hitchcock coming out and being like, this movie is in fact about the way that we destroy nature and conservation and everything. That's by Hitchcock. I have never heard the man speak in my life. That's not clear.
Actually pretty close. He has a really distinctive way of speaking. Like the very first syllable was pretty close.
Wow, all right. Well, you don't pat myself on the back there. But he came out and was like, yeah, it's all about like conservation. We've taken too much from nature. This is nature taking back from us, which is represented in the back half by the fact that the birds are attacking everyone. But we don't really see that first half. Like we don't see us claiming nature or anything like that. We just see Tippi Hedren driving in from the city, and like you could have had oil digging or growth projects, construction happening around, but instead it just kind of it's something that was told to us, and we just have to accept, even though the movie itself doesn't really play into that in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah,
so
like I was thinking that if we really are going for the Birdemic like environmentalism angle, like wouldn't it have made more sense for the birds to attack San Francisco than the sleepy small town? Like, the big looming, like, city, like, coughing up smoke and shit.
I mean, yes, that would make more sense, but nothing in this movie really makes much sense, so I wouldn't think too hard about it.
No. I mean, I would not be surprised if Hitchcock just said that. I was like, whatever, man. Hal, it's about birds.
Yeah, I mean, my favorite thing that we found about this whole movie, though, is somebody in 2018 wrote a piece about how, like, The Birds is the environmental movie we need in 2018. And there is so much to unpack with that, starting with least but not least. What is this phrase I am trying to say here? Least but not least is nothing. I'm going to just steamroll through that one. The Birdemic is exactly what you're talking about. It got made and is very bad. So maybe don't, though, is the thing.
And plus it's like, I mean, it's not like they don't make movies like this. Like, how many times when we were still doing current movies, like how many times did I complain about some like hackneyed like global warming fucking like villain motivation that's just there to be
Godzilla,
yeah.
Fast and the Furious, Kingsman.
I feel like it shows up in some weird places. Like there's one on the tip of my tongue. I mean, Godzilla is probably the most infamous example. People still roast me because I complained about that like villain rant so much.
God, I was so mad about that one. Why did she have a PowerPoint?
But yeah, so like it's not like they aren't making those. Oh, Venom had it. That's what I'm thinking of.
Oh my God. Yeah. Holy shit. Yeah. And those are four that we came up with really quickly off the top of our tongues. We did no research on this. We're just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah. So like bullshit, like half-baked environmentalism is definitely a trend, and The Birds is even more half-baked than all of those movies, and it's environmentalist finger quotes message.
Yeah. There is nothing there to support any of these themes, but like there's a lot of like almost ideas there. Like I kind of like the weird Lynchian dialogue where they were just talking about directions. There's so much talk about directions in this fucking movie. It drove me insane and was almost like it could have been something like that. Feels like something that would have been directly out of Twin Peaks, like some weird direction thing that like the fans of the series is going to uncover and like tear through and like track down in like a real world analogy to like New Orleans or something and find out that there's a weird hidden tombstone somewhere or something. In this, it's just like, yes, you're trying to get across the island. Well, to do so, you're going to have to drive around. But that's to the front gate. I would like to get to the back gate. Is there any other way there? Well, no, there's not. Unless you want to go by the dock, well, that will take you around back. Yes, how would I do that? I will call a boat for you. Is the daughter's name Angie? I believe it's actually Eloise. But it's not actually Eloise. It's in fact Angie. You should go talk to the school teacher. And how would I get to the school teacher? To get to that, you're going to take a right here, drive until you get to the schoolhouse, and then you're going to take a right again until you get to the red mailbox. Thank you very much. And that was basically a paraphrased conversation from the movie.
It was hardly even paraphrased. I was about to say that, like, that rundown you just did was like the Donkey video where he explains the entire timeline of Kingdom Hearts as a joke, which is to say it wasn't a joke at all.
Yeah, no, like that is... I know that was almost exactly what they said. That was almost spot on. I don't know why I remembered it. I feel like it's going to be ingrained in my brain now and I'm going to hate it. But I do know that.
Because there's something so banal about it. Like, and I get that to a degree, that's what we're trying to do to, like, you know, and I respect that the movie commits to the bit of making things go really slow and like really, really holding out on the bird shit.
And like the banalness can be creepy. I just need to say that. Twin Peaks, like a good shed over Innsmouth where there's just something weird and underlying in everything. It's totally possible. The dialogue honestly is kind of weird and unsettling until you realize that it's not trying to be, it's just boring.
I think my core problem with it is that Tippi Hedren's character, like, it takes a long time for her to make, like, any sense as a character at all. And by then it's too late. I'm already bored and I don't give a fuck.
I don't think her character makes any sense, period, honestly. I don't understand this weird practical joke thing, but not really a practical joker, but I'm still gonna go deliver lovebirds like 3 hours away for no fucking reason. And, like, I guess it's flirting, but... who fucking flirts like that? That's just all sorts of fucking creepy. What is wrong with anything going on here? It's fucking wild, man.
Yeah, I agree. Like, the details are weird and, like, make sense is maybe a strong word. But, like, I get the angle that they're going for. Like, she's kind of an aloof, like, socialite who doesn't really, like, give a fuck about anything. Like, typical big city girl. But, like, that isn't made clear at all until like a conversation like right before the birds attack. So like in these terms of these like banal conversations, we're not creeped out by the townspeople. We're creeped out by her because she's acting incredibly fucking weird.
Yeah, and the fact that nobody was like, all right, hang on. Do you know anything about why you're here? Can you answer me any question about this man that you are trying to like hunt down, you creepy fucking psycho?
Yeah, it's like the characters are just so strange. Like, I don't know if I said it earlier, if I only said this in the pre-discussion, but like this feels like one of the only Hitchcock movies I've seen where the characters don't feel like real people. Like even the like heightened characters in something like North by Northwest or like, you know, the crazy like murder plan in Vertigo. Like even though these are extreme situations, the characters still behave like a person might be expected to, given whatever situation they're in. Like this is just... Tippi Hedren feels like an alien in this, and like it's not. I know that that's making me sound like it's her fault, which I actually like her acting, but like the way the character is written is so fucking weird.
I completely agree. The only character that feels somewhat normal is the school teacher.
Yeah.
Because, like, she kind of clearly has some unresolved jealousy issues, and that's very well portrayed. And, like, it kind of makes sense where she's like, I have to let him go, but I want to be friends, but I'm clearly not totally over him, so I'm going to be kind of jealous. Like, that whole angle, I think the school teacher and Tippi Hedren are, like, a very interesting dynamic there. Unfortunately, that whole thing lasts about 5 minutes and then never comes back. The call in her parlor, I thought was really interesting. And then, yeah, it quickly fades away after that. Also, the mom doesn't make a lick of sense either. I don't understand what's up with the mom at all.
I mean, the mom is weird because, like, we're coming right off of Psycho, and she's, like, basically Mother from Psycho, but supposed to be sympathetic.
And worse. Like, her whole thing just does not make sense to me. Like, I genuinely was trying to understand what Mother is all about, because she's like, I want him to be happy, but I don't want him to leave me. And the entire time I'm like, you have a daughter. Are we just gonna ignore your second child who cannot leave home because she is 14?
Well, so I get this angle a little more. I think there is something to the fact that, like, the other scene that I like, there are two dialogue scenes that I like in this. The first one is the one you mentioned between the school teacher and Tippi Hedren, and the second one is where the mom talks about being a widow. And I think that her character and the way that she talks, like, makes sense there, but, like, that's the only time. Like, other times she just, like, acts sort of weird, and, like, this idea that she's kind of projecting, like, the role of her dead husband onto her son. Like, I think it's there, but something about the way the character is portrayed just doesn't make it feel real.
Yeah, I mean, I can see where you're coming from, but I don't know, man. Like, there's just so much weirdness to the whole dialogue and the whole angle that it doesn't ever really land in a cohesive manner to make the character feel like a character. Like, that's, as you said, no one in this movie, aside from the teacher, has any real character to them. Oh, and we should mention the crazy old person who is an ornithologist all of a sudden. That is definitely a character and not some sort of weird Deus Ex Machina drop from the sky. Although she isn't really a Deus Ex Machina because she doesn't solve shit. She just shows up, exposits a bunch, and then walks away.
Well, you know, I thought that actually, like, that. See, this is what I mean, that I think that there is some stuff in isolation, like, in this movie that I like. I just think it just doesn't come together into any sort of cohesive whole. Because, like, that, the ornithologist feels like a bit of, like, Hitchcockian sort of sly humor of, like, you know, you have this authority who's, like, talking out of her ass, and she's like a kind of a fuddy-duddy and saying all this shit even as, like, stuff blows up. Like, there's something, like, kind of, like, you know, wink 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 nudge nudge about it, and, like, how kind of quirky she is, but it doesn't really mean anything. It's just sort of fun for a bit.
Well, hang on. I think I just heard a mountain lion. I should probably get back to my house, and you should probably get back to your car. That's a Birdemic reference for those of you who aren't in the know.
There's an ornithologist in Birdemic too, but he's a more straightforward exposition man.
Oh my god, I forgot about that ornithologist too.
Yeah, he's the one wearing the coronavirus mask and talks about
Whoa, stay back.
Bird flu and SARS, and he gives his whole spiel about, you know, the birds taking their vengeance upon the earth. So yeah, like, he's kind of inverse ornithologist in this movie, because ornithologist in this movie is here to be wrong and clueless, like every authority figure in Hitchcock movies.
Well, see, Birdemic is honestly the inverse of the birds. And so, like, I think there's a lot to be said with how that works, because the ornithologist plays a different role. The final shot, as opposed to the birds flying away while they stand on the beach, as in Birdemic, in this movie, the people drive away while the birds stand by the house. I started this with a lot of authority, hoping that I would be able to turn it into a joke at some point, and I realized that I would come up with 2 points and then just kind of fizzle out without really delivering a punchline. So
the problem is that would require Birdemic to, like, actually purposefully be, like, playing with the birds and not just remaking the birds, but by a clown man of a director.
It is weird how many similarities there are, though. Like, it because the Clown Man of a director clearly understood the birds in theory, but just like I wonder how much of it was just like a weird lack of budget and filmmaking understanding. Because thinking back through it again, as someone who's like dealing with audio and has been, watching a shit ton of movies and whatnot, I can kind of see where a lot of the impulses come from. Like the whole driving sequence in the beginning is very weird and bad to us, but feels very of the time period. So like I can kind of see the mirror there. Like the weird audio boost suddenly in the diner is him trying to isolate the audio there, but doing a very poor job at it, not understanding like audio mixing in that section. I hope I'm not getting a weird appreciation for Birdemic having watched The Birds. That feels like a weird thing to do.
Well, because the thing about Birdemic, like, I don't know much about writer, director, producer James Nguyen. I know that he made the sequel, Birdemic 2, The Zombie Rising, and like sold out the same way Tommy Wiseau did by like leaning into it, whereas the first one is so clearly like a sincere Hitchcock send up with an environmentalist core.
$1 billion.
Yeah. This is a revolutionary green tech, guys.
If you haven't watched Birdemic, highly recommended. Get drunk, have a good time with it. Listen, Jax and I are talking about this movie like we had watched it in preparation with The Birds. We have just seen it enough times that like this is all off the cuff. I haven't seen this movie in like a year. And
it's been longer for me, but I know like every fucking line of dialogue.
Yeah, it is crazy. So like, highly recommended.
Birdemic is a god tier, fucking so bad it's good. If you're into that sort of thing and you somehow haven't seen it, you need to rectify that. But I mean, for Alfred Hitchcock's The Birds, I get why people like it. There are things about it in isolation that I like, but it's just not really worth going back to, I don't think.
No, I agree. This was the first Hitchcock movie that Sam sat through with me, and she was just like, this is boring and inane, and she was doing work through it, and I'm like, this is my work, so I can only watch this movie, and I struggled so hard to stay off Twitter through it, because I'm just like, every time I'm like, okay, nothing is happening, I'm gonna look at Twitter for a minute, and then I'm like, shit, no, I can't, I need to actually pay attention to my job. The Birds is weird. Anything else we want to say before we wrap up here? Oh, I do just want to mention really quick the song that the children sing, because I did look it up because it was infuriating to me. It is Rizzledy Rozzledy. It is a complete garbage nonsense song, and like that's the point of it. And it drove me up a wall the entire time I was hearing it, because I could only hear that she combed her hair but once a year. Every time it came around, there's multiple stanzas to it, but that's all I ever heard. And it sang for like 5 minutes, and I was losing my goddamn mind. It's the song that never ends.
It sounds like a song that Skimble Skunks, the War Room Cat, would sing.
Oh, God. You were going to say something?
No. Actually, I think we can leave it at that.
I do want to give my one positive remark in our whole conversation.
Ooh.
When she's driving into town and she's like driving fast and you hear the tires screeching. At one point it pans down to the birds and they turn from side to side with her driving, and I thought that was a good sight gag. That's what I got, man. That's what I got.
Get fucked, Hitchcock.
Retweet though, because I'm so happy that we could talk about things that aren't Hitchcock next week. I'm so excited.
I know I'm the one that I suggested it. I don't know how excited I am for Independence Day.
Well, I've never seen it, so I'm pretty excited for it, honestly.
It'll be good memes at least. No, Independence Day is, well, we'll talk about it when we get there.
I'm excited. I've been Sean McKinda. Find me on Twitter at Sean_McKinda. Find my writing at 25yearslatersite.com. Again, always putting out into the ether. Fingers crossed you'll find my writing someplace else too soon.
And I'm Jackson Keller. You can find me on YouTube. I'm Jackson Keller. Subscribe, I guess.
If you want to get in contact with the podcast, we're at BADH_cast on Twitter. We'll just post updates on like, hey, the episode's going out or the episode's not going out. That's really all we do there. If you want to yell at Jackson and I directly, probably me if you've been listening to the past 4 weeks, given that I have weird, bad Hitchcock takes.
The Birds is pretty well liked, so they have a reason to yell at me this week now.
The Birds is well liked. I know that you said that people like it. I wasn't prepared for well liked.
Well, I don't know. Like, I know that people like it insofar as like this is definitely like the normie Hitchcock movie for sure. As far as the critical consensus, I don't know if my man English professor is the dominant opinion on that. I would be kind of surprised if it wasn't, but I'm not sure. But no, as far as like regular people, yeah, regular people love The Birds.
Fuck off. If you want to yell at us, then I suppose the best place to do that is on our Discord. You get access to that by donating to our Patreon. At only $1 a month, you get access to our Discord where you can yell at us directly. $5 a month gets you access to our backlog of bonus episodes. We got a whole bunch of really, really good ones, including one coming out fairly shortly after this episode goes live. So keep your eyes peeled. And if you want to suggest bonus episodes, that's at the $10 tier. And thank you, Julia, for suggesting the one that we're going to be talking about. Stay tuned. You also get a little something, something.
Thank you so much again, Julia, for being a Stallion patron in addition to giving us for an idea for next time. We also have other Stallion patrons.
Was that lovely a sentence?
It was. My brain broke because I'm talking about The Birds too long.
I mean, I can't really talk after saying Scottish lock like 3 times, but
I'm feeling a little bird brained at the moment. Thank you so much to our other Stallion patrons. Travis, Pat, Mom, Aunt Summer, y'all are great. Y'all are wonderful. Money.
Thank you also to The Highway for our theme song. It is Suicide, alternate take off the album High Octane Low Expectations. They're a wonderful band. Go support them however you can. Buy their music, stream their music, whatever you got to do. Also, thanks to 25yearslatersite.com. We got a little button in the corner over there, but you should also go check out the website. There's a bunch of really cool people doing a bunch of really cool stuff, doing a lot of really good writing. It's good stuff, I promise. Next week, as we've said multiple times now, we're going to be talking about Independence Day. It's going to be a change if nothing else, man. That's all I need right now.
Going from Uwe Boll to Alfred Hitchcock to Roland Emmerich. Truly a cavalcade of true auteurs.
Oh my God, you just gave me a migraine. I didn't... I was trying to figure out why I've been so burned out on movies recently, and I think that just answered it. I also forgot that Roland Emmerich is the director of Independence Day, and like, oh my God.
Independence Day is what put Roland Emmerich on the map.
I know. I think the only movies I've seen of Roland Emmerich's are 2012, which is an absolute shit show of a movie I remember not liking as a kid. Again, if you are a child and you don't like a movie, that says something. That's a big deal. Granted, it came out in like 2010, so I was in like 10th grade, but still, like that was me peak schlock Sean movies. Like I should love that. And then I also know 8-Legged Freaks, which I kind of unironically love, but he didn't direct that. He's just like an executive producer on it. So
I think aside from Independence Day, I think the only Roland Emmerich movie I've seen is Godzilla 98, which is of course garbage. So
I've told this story before, but I'll do it again really quick. I did not watch Godzilla 98 because I was afraid to as a child, and so I had to go sit in my room while my father, mother, and younger sister by 4 years watched Godzilla 98, and I sulked.
I was definitely a crybaby kid, so I have a similar story actually about a Roland Emmerich film because my family really loves The Day After Tomorrow because they're a bunch of libcucks.
Oh, I've seen The Day After Tomorrow too. That's Roland Emmerich?
That's Roland. I'm pretty sure that's Roland Emmerich.
I was gonna say I love The Day After Tomorrow. I loved The Day After Tomorrow. I don't know if I still do.
But no, like the thought of The Day After Tomorrow, and like
confirmed, it is Emmerich. I looked it up.
Oh, it's global warming message worked a little too well on me as like a 6-year-old or however old I was when that came out, because I saw like the planet freezing over and stuff. I'm like, this is gonna happen to me. I don't want to watch this movie.
I mean, honestly, God, it might have something to do with why I was so wigged out by movies for a while too, because I definitely watched it probably when I was in like 6th grade. Honestly, this came out in 2004, so like 2 years later, and like I get this movie probably wigged me out a little bit too. Honestly.
Yeah, no, I was a baby kid. I didn't want to watch Jurassic Park, even though I love dinosaurs, because it scared me. I was just the soyest of boys, man.
It's weird though. I always loved horror novels and stuff, and then like I eventually came back around to horror movies, and now I'm a weirdo who loves horror movies. But I don't know. We've been going on for too long. Bye.
Ciao, matane.
Don't you go into the ground. Don't you go